Hello and welcome to the March 25th, 2021 edition of the Bobby Hesley Show. I am back in Hesley Studios. I went a little bit old school lately. I got back to my walk and talks. I've been dropping some drive and dives, some sit and spits, which is kind of the legacy of my channel. That's kind of how it all got started, folks. Your man Bobby Hesley just walking and talking and sharing his thoughts. But today, I am back in Hesley Studios, the Central Command Center. How's everybody doing today? Also, happy feast day of the Incarnation. Today is March 25th on the Catholic liturgical calendar, which is directly 9 months before Christmas. It was on this day today in the first century that Our Lady, our Blessed Mother, gave her fiat to the Archangel Gabriel, where she said, "Be it done unto me according to thy word." And it was at that point in time that the Holy Spirit overshadowed her, and the second person of the Trinity took flesh in her womb and became man. We are exactly 9 months out from the feast of Christmas, the birthday of our Lord. Just thought I would drop that little aside. How's everybody doing this morning? Hello, Sean Crum. Hello, my man, Vance Patrick. It's good to see everybody. I'm going to get back to doing maybe some early morning shows because I have been very, very busy lately. I've been focusing on those things that I can control no matter who is in the White House. And I'm going to admit, as you guys have noticed, it has pulled me away from my regular broadcast that you guys have become accustomed to doing. But let me see some ones in the comment sections. If you guys want your man, Bobby Hesley, to do his best to get back to streaming every day, let me see some ones if you want to see that happen. Let me see some like and love emojis if you want to see that happen. And there they are. Look at all those ones, folks. I guess your man Bobby Hesley is a man in demand. So I will do my best to get back to streaming as much as I can. But you might have to deal with some walk and talks every once in a while, which, I actually prefer to do walk and talks, believe it or not. Motion creates emotion. There's a whole different dynamic of when you're sitting down compared to when you're out walking and talking. I don't know. I feel like I'm better on my feet than I am sitting down, but that's up for debate. Let me also see some ones. If you guys are ready for this great country to open back up again, let me see some ones. Let me see some ones if you guys want to see the Trump economy, which is still, in my opinion, a sleeping giant, to be unleashed and finally wake up. Let me see some ones. We have not seen the last of the Trump economy. And don't be surprised when Jim Crow Joe and Kamala Harris take credit for the economy coming back, just like they're already taking credit for Operation Warp Speed. They're already taking credit for the vaccine, who they fought tooth and nail against while Trump was trying to push it. And now they're bragging about 50 million vaccinations, 100 million vaccinations within the first 100 days. Well, how in the heck do you think he was able to pull that off were it not for his predecessor who launched it with Operation Warp Speed? But that is not what today's video is about today. That is not at all what today's video about. What today's video is about is
I know you got that stimulus check.
Huh? What? That's what today's video is about, folks. Let's talk about gimme, gimme. I want my Jimmy Stimmy. Gimme, gimme. I got Jimmy. And I want me some Stimmy. That's what today's show is about, folks. These degrading, socialistic, bankrupting, currency cheapening stimulus checks. We're going to get into this today, folks. And you heard me right. Stimulus checks are degrading. They are. I'm not being insensitive to people who need stimulus checks. I'm not being insensitive to people that could use a sudden cash infusion of $1,400. I'm not throwing shade on that. But the fact is, by the time you guys watch my analysis today, you are going to realize that stimulus checks, rather than enriching you, rather than giving you a cash infusion, are actually impoverishing you and are putting you deep into future debt. You and your children are going to pay dearly for these stimulus checks, whether or not you qualified for one. That's the other messed up thing about it. There's lots of Americans that for some reason or another didn't get their gimme, I got my Jimmy Stimmy. And yet you still are on the hook to pay for a stimulus check that you didn't even get. That is a textbook definition of socialism, folks. That is the textbook definition. And the only difference between you and everybody else who got their gimme, I want my stimmy, my Jimmy Stimmy check, is that they're $1,400 ahead of you as far as paying off that debt. But that's about it. And we're going to get into that. Stimulus checks are a form of socialism, and they are also a form of redistribution of wealth. You have the rich who are redistributing their wealth to the poor by government force, but you also have the poor who are redistributing their wealth to the rich. Everybody is redistributing their wealth to everybody else. Because whether you're a millionaire, a billionaire, or somebody who's just living paycheck to paycheck, you are going to pay for the $1,400 stimulus check, whether you receive it or not. And I'm going to get into all kinds of the different ways that these so-called stimulus packages leave you much worse off than they help you, especially in the long term. Just to give you an example, my best friend, he called me last week and he's like, hey, Bobby, man, I just got $9,800. I just got a $9,800 stimulus. He's got a wife and 5 kids. And if you're married, you actually get $1,400 per family member. But you know what he said to me, though? It was kind of bittersweet because he was like, yeah, I got $9,800. The next words out of his mouth was, man, this is just straight up socialism. And it is, folks. It really, really is. And socialism has never, ever worked. It's been tried many times. And I challenge anybody to show me a single time that socialism has been tried and that it has worked. Because the fact of the matter is this, folks, you cannot tax a nation into prosperity. You cannot confiscate your way into prosperity. And that's why socialism doesn't work. It doesn't, folks. It's been tried by so many other countries. And that's why immigrants who are currently in this country, and I'm talking about legal immigrants, I'm not talking about illegal immigrants. I'm talking about the people who kept the rules, who stood in line, who paid the fees, who went through all the bureaucratic red tape and did everything that they had to do to not break our immigration laws, who come here, who pay their fair share of taxes, who learn our language, who learn our culture, who don't live in the shadows, and who actually contribute to the system rather than tax the system. People who come here and actually work really hard, pay their taxes so that they can pull their fair share and benefit from all the services that we have living in a civilized society, like police, fire department, EMS, military, post office, mailing our stamps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, rather than people who come here, take away jobs from minorities, take away jobs from tax-paying Americans that are legal immigrants, and rather than pay their fair share of taxes, they send their money back home overseas to the other families that they left, whether it's in Mexico or wherever else. They take from our economy, and then the money that they take from the economy, they use it to build up the economy that they fled from, the communist socialist economy that they fled from. And that is what's going on at our borders right now on the dime of Jim Crow Joe Biden, who can't even make its way up Stair Force 1 without tripping 3 times. But the fact is, folks, the goal of stimulus packages, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the majority of the people watching this video, the goal of stimulus packages is not to stimulate the economy. It is actually to break the economy. It is actually to depress the economy. Why? Because stimulus packages weaken the value of our currency. And a weak dollar leads to a weak economy. And a weak U.S. American economy leads to a weak global market. It does. As goes the U.S. economy, so goes the world's economy. The U.S. dollar, since the 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement, is still the world reserve currency. The entire world depends on the strength of the U.S. dollar. And when the U.S. dollar is strong, the world economy is strong. When the value of the U.S. dollar is increasing, the global economy is increasing. Conversely, when the value of the U.S. dollar goes down, the world economy becomes very sick. And if the government continues to print this monopoly money, this fake fiat currency monopoly money at the rate that they are printing it with all these porculous packages, it's not going to bode well for the world economy, folks. It is not going to bode well. The fact is, when the government is taking care of everybody, now I believe in the social safety net, okay? To a certain extent, there is an element of social responsibility towards those who are not able-bodied or able-minded to care for themselves. Don't get me wrong on that. The drug addicts, those who are mentally ill, those who are disabled, those who are elderly, those who truly are not able to work and be productive and take care of themselves the way that we are blessed to be able to take care of ourselves. I believe that we all have an obligation to support those people. That is not degrading at all. As a matter of fact, it would be degrading not to care for those people. We would be an unjust society if we neglected those that are below the socioeconomic ladder, below the poverty line. And I'm talking about our legal citizens. Listen, I'm not against having immigrants, but we have to take care of our own first. We have to take care of our own veterans. We have to take care of our own homeless. We have to take care of our own unemployed before we can walk around being the savior to the world and taking care of all those poor people that come from other countries. Guys, what kind of family would you have if the father of your family allowed you and your siblings and your mom to starve so that he could feed all the other kids in the neighborhood who break into their house, by the way? They break their locks open and they raid their fridge. And the dad says, hey, go ahead and take it. Why? Because I'm kind and I'm loving and I believe in socialism. So go ahead, break into my house, help yourself to the fridge, mi casa, su casa. I know my wife and kids are starving and they haven't eaten in a week. But hey, at least I'm a good person, right? At least I'm a bleeding heart liberal that's willing to take care of the whole neighborhood, that doesn't take my house seriously because I don't have locks on my doors and I let people just break into my house. But at least it helps me feel good about myself. Huh? At least I'm not a racist. That's essentially what's going on in our country right now, folks. That is how Jim Crow Joe and all Democrats treat border control, because the fact of the matter is the Democrat Party for the last 20 or 30 years has been working very hard to replace the black vote. Uh-oh. I'm getting ready to go there. All these illegal immigrants, make no mistake about it, they are here because since the 1960s, the Democrat Party has been aborting the black vote out of existence. 20 million aborted dead babies. And if you factor in what I call the birth opportunity cost, right? The first generation of Roe versus Wade, you know how old they would be right now? They would be 48 years old by now. Do you realize that? They would be old enough to have a couple of kids of their own and maybe even some grandkids. So if you factor in each black baby that's been aborted since 1973, right? Let's say they at least could have had one kid. That doubles it right away. That 20 million, that doubles it to 40 million right away. 40 million future Democrat voters that have been aborted out of existence. And the Democrats know this. They know that they have kept us black people stuck at 13%. Why is it that the black race is the only race of all the races in the country that has stuck at 13% for the last half plus century? Because we get aborted. These Democrats are killing us. They are killing 900 of us every single day. Well, believe it or not, when you're aborting 900 black babies a day, that's 900 less black people that you can indoctrinate in your crappy public schools. That's 900 less black people every day. 900 less black voters 18 years from now that can vote for you. So you got to start plugging that hole. You got to start fixing that segment of your voter base that you're hemorrhaging, that you are causing the hemorrhage because you keep aborting us. So how do they solve that? They say, okay, we need the black population to stay at 13% because let's keep it honest. We don't want to eradicate the black population like Margaret Sanger wanted to do, but we want to keep them just big enough to where we can win enough votes from them every 4 years. We just want to keep it contained because if we allow the black population to grow, they're going to become too powerful for us. And I encourage you to read Exodus chapter 1, verse 8. Because in Exodus 1, verse 8, Pharaoh had the same fear about the Jews. As a matter of fact, give your man Bobby Hesley a second and listen to what it says. Listen to what this says in Exodus 1:8. I'm taking a little bit of an aside here. We got a little bit of time. Listen to what Exodus 1:8 says and tell me how similar this is to Democrat thinking. Hold on, let me get the ESV version. I like the ESV the best. Now listen to what this says. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. This is the old patriarch Joseph. And he said to his people, behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply. And if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. Therefore, they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramesses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service and mortar and brick and in all kinds of other work in the field. In all their work, they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. Did you get that? I believe that the Democrat Party is in fear of the black population because the fact is, if they would take all their abortion clinics out of our neighborhoods, we would multiply so much that we would grow too powerful for them. And guess what? We would overthrow them. We would leave the Democrat Party. If black people were just given a chance to, like all the other races in the population are given a chance to grow and expand their numbers, if we were given that same chance by these supposedly compassionate Democrats who love the black man, the supposed friend of the Negro, which was a term that Malcolm X actually coined in the 1960s to expose white liberals. Malcolm X said that white liberals pose as the friend of the Negro so that they can enslave and manipulate them. So these woke Democrats who act like they're the friend of the Negro really are afraid of the Negro because we could start our own party if we were allowed to multiply and we wouldn't need the Democrat Party. I just wanted to take that quick side note because I believe it's very relevant to our situation. I believe it's very pertinent to what is going on in this country right now. And I think that it is degrading when the government takes care of the entire population. I believe the government should take care of a portion of the population. Don't get me wrong. But when they take care of the entire population, like they're trying to do right now with these porculous, quote unquote, relief packages, these gimme, I want my Jimmy Stimmy packages, that's what's degrading, folks. Now, for those of you who have not done so yet, please like this video, comment on it, share it, and make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel because I have 2 very pertinent articles there that you guys need to read. And if you want to get access to these articles, you got to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Head on over there. I make it really easy in the description to find me on all the different places. I'm going to read a quick piece from the American Thinker that was written yesterday that talks about the destructive effects of stimulus packages. And again, if you want to read this whole article, make sure you head over to my YouTube channel so you can get access to it. It says, quote, since the pandemic began, the federal government has passed 3 stimulus packages totaling $5.6 trillion. Now, Donald Trump signed one of those stimulus packages. Actually, he signed 2 of them. That's one part of Donald Trump's presidency that I didn't entirely agree with. However, Donald Trump was fighting tooth and nail to make sure that all of that stimulus money went to the American people. Unfortunately, he was outnumbered in Congress, and they tied his hands, and they threw all this pork in the bills sending money overseas to pay for gender education over in India and all these other countries that we sent all these billions of dollars to, all these hundreds of millions of dollars to, including Iran. He had no choice but to sign it because the Democrats threw so much pork in it that they would have killed it if he didn't sign it. And he legitimately wanted Americans to get relief, especially 1 year ago. We're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of when Trump had to shut down the economy because of the coronavirus. And he wanted all that money to go to Americans. And unfortunately, he was unsuccessful in that endeavor because you can always count on Democrats to fill up their stimulus bills with pork to where we only got a small percentage of that money. The article continues, including $900 billion in December of 2020 and $1.9 trillion in March 2021. The American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, also known as ARPA. What makes the pandemic spending harmful is the continued growth in debt by, number one, the consistent inability of the federal government to limit itself to only the revenue that it has. This is what I hate about the federal government, folks, is that for the rest of us, we have to live within our means. We can't spend more money than we actually have, or we're going to go deep into debt. But the federal government is able to live and spend far above its means. Why? Because if they run out of money for all of their Santa Claus, gimme, I want my Jimmy Stimmy programs, they can just print fake monopoly money to make up for the shortfall. And I'm going to get into how destructive that is when they print that money to the US dollar. Number two, the size of the US overall debt in comparison to the size of the economy. The US GDP is $21.43 trillion in 2019. It would take the average American, get this, guys, here's where it starts to hurt you. It would take the average American more than 2.5 years using up all of their annual income to pay off their debt portion. Now, each of us are on the hook. Whatever the public debt is, it is our debt collectively. That's why it's called public debt. It belongs to all of us. So do you guys want to know what your share is of our public debt? We're approaching $30 trillion in public debt. Well, this American Thinker author goes into that. It says, quote, each American owns more than $82,000 of the debt, but per capita income is only $32,000. This is the largest external public debt in the world. High debt levels are sometimes described as, quote, driving with the emergency brake on. In 2019, interest on the debt totaled $3.75 billion. That's just interest only, folks, not even principal, or 8.5% of the budget, which crowds out other spending. So let me show you guys some math because I'm a man of receipts and, I believe in showing math. Let me show you guys some math for a second. Let me just pull up my calci here. Let me share my screen here. Give me 1 second. I want to show you guys some math that nobody can argue with. Okay. So let me clear the calculator here. And so get this. So each American, because of the debt that we have, each of us Americans are on the hook for $82,000 a piece, folks. $82,000 a piece. Let me get a cleared up calculator. Here we go. So let's look at some numbers. $82,000 a piece. Now, you remember I was telling you my best friend, he called me up like, hey, man, we just got $9,800 for our stimulus because they're a family of 7, right? Now get this. They're a family of 7. Each of them owes $82,000 as of right now in our public debt. So if you multiply this $82,000 by 7, my best friend's family is $574,000 in debt to the federal government for spending that they had nothing to do with, for all these stimulus packages, all these porculus packages, all this government spending. His family of 7, his small little family of 7, collectively owes $574,000 as their share of the U.S. debt. And yet, they got a little $9,800. Whoop-de-doo. What's $9,800 compared to $574,000, huh? That's what's messed up. Isn't that messed up, guys? Again, I'm a numbers guy. I'm a math guy. And that's what we're all on the hook for, folks. How unjust is that? That is theft. That is theft from current and future generations. It really is. Now, there's another article that I want you guys to read. And again, if you want to read this in its fullness, which I highly recommend you do, you will learn so much. You need to head over to my YouTube channel. You need to subscribe, and you can have access to it. So after hearing these numbers, and I'm not done with the numbers yet. After hearing these numbers, who's excited about their $1,400 gimme, I want my Jimmy Stimmy, huh? Who's excited now after hearing those numbers?
I know you got that stimulus check.
What? Now, this article was written by Kimberly Amadeo. Again, go to my channel if you want to read the whole thing. Here's what she says. When the debt exceeds the tipping point, your standard of living will slowly deteriorate. So now I got into the long term in the beginning, right? I got into the macro vision of how stimulus checks hurt us long term. We are, each and every one of us, as $82,000 in future debt that can only be paid off by tax increases. It just is what it is, guys. We're all in debt. So that's long term. That's the macro picture. But what about short term? What about the micro picture? What about how does all this debt, how do all these porculous, gimme, I want my Jimmy Stimmy packages, how do they affect us right now in the short term? Kimberly Amadeo goes into that. When the debt exceeds the tipping point, your standard of living will slowly deteriorate. It's like driving with the emergency brake on. Debt holders demand larger interest payments. Now, who are the debt holders of American debt? We're the debt payers. In other words, we're on the hook to pay the debt, but who are the debt holders that actually get paid on our debt, who actually collect our interest on debt? I'll tell you exactly who they are. The CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. Do you guys know that China is the largest holder of debt notes of the United States of America? All these treasury bonds, by far, China is the largest holder of U.S. Treasury bonds, which means that the American economy is owned by the Chinese Communist Party, period. And that's a fact. So we have to pay the interest. We, as American taxpayers, have to service the debt to the tune of $80,000 apiece. But it's the Chinese Communist Party that gets to collect that $375 billion just in interest every year. Just in interest. Guys, could you imagine what would happen to our economy if China just decided to call in their debt and want it to be paid in full? We're at the mercy of China right now, folks. Why do you guys think Trump, since 2015, matter of fact, there's interviews I played on previous shows back from 2012 when Donald Trump appeared on the Rush Limbaugh program during the 2012 election season, talking about how if he ever ran for president, that one of the main stakes of his presidency was that he would go after China. Donald Trump has been after China for years, guys. And that was one of the centerpieces of his presidency. It was one of the centerpieces of his campaigns. We always talk about promises made, promises kept. One of the promises that he made and one of the promises that he kept was that if he became president of the United States, that he would go after China and he would break their hold on our economy. And folks, it's amazing how far he got in that endeavor in his 4 years in office. We were right there. We were right on the cusp of freeing our economy from the chokehold of the Chinese Communist Party. And then Jim Crow Joe got in there, and all that was just stopped dead in its tracks. They own us again, guys. We are owned by China again. It continues. The debt holders, i.e., the Chinese Communist Party, the people who own our debt, who own all these treasury bills, they want compensation for an increasing risk that won't be repaid. That increases interest rates and slows the economy. It puts downward pressure on a country's currency. Its value is tied to the value of the country's bonds, i.e., treasury bonds. We also call them T-bills, treasury bills, right? As the currency's value declines, foreign holders' repayments are worth less and also worthless. The further decreases demand and drives up interest rates. As the currency declines, imports become more expensive, and that contributes to inflation. And that is the next portion. Before I wrap up, that's the next thing that I want to get into. And that is the short-term way that all these porculus packages, all these gimme, I want my Jimmy Stimmy packages, break us. Folks, we all get angered and outraged over gas prices that go up, and rightfully so. I mean, gas prices have gone up, at least $1 since Jim Crow Joe took over? And there's no end in sight, guys. We're no longer energy independent. Trump made us energy independent. Biden and the Democrats, first thing they did was they shut down the Keystone Pipeline. In the stroke of a pen, he killed 42,000 jobs just like that. Just like that. While he was wearing a stupid mask, and all of his handlers and all of his puppet masters were standing around him. Jim Crow Joe saying, what am I signing? What am I signing? Well, you were signing away 42,000 jobs on the Keystone Pipeline. So we're no longer energy independent. We're no longer an energy exporter. We're now an energy importer again because the Democrats love putting us in bed with the Saudis, depending on them for our oil, which is a national security threat. Because the 9/11 hijackers, they were all Saudis. Where do you think they got all that money? Where do you think Al-Qaeda got all that money to build that global terrorist network? It was oil money. Who's their largest oil customer? The United States of America was. We have more oil here in the United States than anywhere else in the world. These Middle East countries, they've been tapping out their oil for the last 70, 80 years. They're getting low on oil. We've left our oil untapped. Why? Because a bunch of climate change environmentalists don't want us to tap our energy reserves, and they kill jobs with their energy regulations. That's just a fact, guys. So the reason why I've got this background, this payday loans background. Now, I grew up in Brightmoor, Detroit. I grew up in the hood. I grew up on Schoolcraft and Evergreen. And anybody who's grown up in the hood like I have, these places, these payday loan places, they are as ubiquitous as liquor stores are. They are on every corner, and they are strategically placed in poor black neighborhoods, just like abortion clinics are. Why? So that poor people can get ripped off. Payday loans are some of the biggest scams and rackets that are out there. And I'm actually shocked that those places are still legal, to be honest with you. I'm surprised the government hasn't just passed sweeping legislation to just outlaw those places. Because when you go to a payday loan store, yeah, you're getting some immediate relief, but you're going to owe all kinds of debt to these payday places, confiscatory levels of interest rate. We're talking 20, 30, sometimes 40% interest rate that these places charge. And they really take advantage of people that are down on their luck. And I'm using that payday loan analogy, guys, because when we get these gimme, I want my Jimmy Stimmy checks, that is like getting a payday loan from the government. That is like getting a high interest payday loan from the government. Because in the short term, we happen to be out of work due to COVID. We're on hard times right now. I need $1,400. But that $1,400 gimme, I want my Jimmy stimulus check, that is going to cost you a lot more than $1,400. Just like when you get one of those payday loans, let's say you get a payday loan for $1,000, you're going to end up spending probably $2,500 for that $1,000. You are going to end up paying more in interest than the principal that was originally lent to you. And these stimulus checks are no different, folks. They are federal government payday loans, except here's the difference. When you go to one of these payday loan places in the hood, yeah, they can maybe try to garnish your bank account. They can put something on your credit report. They can blacklist you to all their other payday loan store owner buddies and say, hey, don't lend to this guy. You know, we lent him $1,400. He didn't pay us back. So they'll put you in some kind of like deadbeat database or something like that. Right. But other than that, there's not much else they can do to you. They'll send your account to a collection agency. You'll get harassing phone calls for the next 3 to 6 months. And that's about all that can happen. Okay. But when Uncle Sam gives you a stimulus check, he's going to want to be paid back. Why? Because Uncle Sam is in debt to the Chinese Communist Party that is propping up this broken, bankrupt economy. And what happens when you don't pay your federal debt to the government? I'll tell you exactly what happens. You could end up in freaking jail because it's called tax evasion. When the government loans you these stimulus checks, they expect to be paid back in full with interest. You know, it's funny how Al Capone was one of the greatest criminals of the 20th century. And the government, no matter how hard they tried, they could not bring down Al Capone. They couldn't get him on prostitution charges. They couldn't get him on racketeering charges. They couldn't get him on murder charges. They couldn't get him on bootlegging charges because he was a bootlegger. He was illegally selling alcohol back while it was illegal before during the prohibition times. Everything the government tried to do, they could not bring him down. You know what finally brought down Al Capone? Wasn't bootlegging, wasn't prostitution, wasn't racketeering, wasn't murder. It was tax evasion. The IRS ended up doing what the FBI was incapable of doing. I've always made the joke that if Osama bin Laden owed back taxes, he would have been apprehended on September 12, 2001. If Osama bin Laden owed back taxes, he would have had a notice of levy sent to his little musty cave in Afghanistan because the IRS would have tracked him down a day later. So that's the difference between these payday loan places. When you get a payday loan from Jim Crow Joe, you best pay that back, and you are $82,000 in the hole plus interest, mind you. That's what they are. Let me kind of show you a clip. Now, I don't always agree with what this man teaches, but he is dead on when it comes to payday loans. Check this out, folks.
Erica is in Tampa, Florida. Hi, Erica. How are you?
I'm great. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How can I help?
I'm currently just working with my fiance. We're getting married in January. We're really trying to tackle a lot of our debt, but we're a little unsure as to how to go about it. We have a couple payday loans that have a really high interest rate, and they take about $400 every 2 weeks to pay. My thought is to tackle those first to free up an extra $800 to throw at all of the other debt. But I know that some people are saying smallest to largest, and I'm kind of just unsure as to what to do next.
Payday lenders, knock them out.
Okay.
They're first because they're killing you.
Yes.
Erica, once you pay those two things off, never set foot in one of those places again.
Agreed.
Ever. Ever. They might as well have put a gun in your face and stolen your money. They're slimy.
Yeah, we're definitely feeling that now.
They're slimy, slimy, slimy businesses. The interest rate is 400 to 800% annually. This is ripping off poor people. You follow me?
Definitely. It's definitely cutting into our wedding budget. We're definitely feeling the pressure.
Yeah.
We have said never again.
Yeah, good. The never again part's where you want to go, because here's the thing. When I do something, when I get really, really desperate, that's usually followed by me doing something really, really stupid.
Right.
That's how you end up in one of those places. You get so desperate that you get double stupid. So the trick is do what you said. Get everything cleaned up, get your emergency fund in place, live on a budget so that you never, ever, ever again are so short of cash that you allow someone to rob you blind.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Definitely.
No.
Facts, folks. Stay away from payday loan places. And like I said, we need to do everything we can to vote these people out of office who push these government payday loans. Because make no mistake about it, these gimme, I want my Jimmy Stimmy checks are nothing less than government payday loans.
I know you got that stimuli check.
Now, before I wrap up the show, I want to get into how destructive inflation is. I'm going to give you a quick breakdown. I'm going to go to some basic economics 101, okay? Now, inflation is the largest form of theft known to man. It's not high taxes. Oftentimes, we're blinded by high taxes. We're blinded by high gas prices. We're blinded by all these other high costs that we have. But make no mistake about it, the easiest way for the government to confiscate the wealth of the people without them knowing, at least not knowing while they're doing it, is through inflation, okay? And inflation is the easiest way to redistribute wealth. Like I said, it's much worse than high taxes. Now, why? Why is inflation so bad? Well, let me give you some basic economics, okay? the more of something that there is, the less valuable it is. It's just basic economics. Just think about the laws of supply and demand. The more supply there is of a given product, the less demand there is for that product because it's everywhere, right? The reverse is also true. The more scarce that product is, the more valuable it is. The more valuable it is, the more it costs. The more it costs, the harder you have to work to be able to afford it. Now, let's apply that principle, that basic economic principle of supply and demand, to the US dollar. The only way that the government can pay for all this crap that they are passing, spending $86 million to put all these illegal immigrants up in hotels just so that they can fix the bad optics of all these kids in cages and all these people that are compressed together in these immigration detention centers, which the media is completely silent about. They are deafeningly silent about. The only way that they can pay for all this stuff is to print money. So the more dollars there are in circulation, the less value those dollars have. We lose what's called our purchasing power. Remember that term, folks. Purchasing power. The more purchasing power that your US dollars have, the higher your quality of life is. The less purchasing power that your US dollar has, the lower your quality of life is. So let me give you an example that we can all relate to. Like I said, I grew up in Brightmoor. I grew up in the hood. And in the hood, we have what are called party stores, liquor stores, right? These corner stores. I used to love me some Better Made Flamin' Hot Chips. You guys remember those Better Made Red Hot Chips? It's a Michigan thing. Anybody who's outside of Michigan, you don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to Better Made. But Better Made is one of many famous things that Detroit is known for, whether it's Verner's or Faygo or Better Made or chili cheese fries. Those are all things that are very unique to Michigan. That those that are outside of our state, really, you're not really up on that. But y'all know who I'm talking about. If you're from the D, y'all know about some Better Made chips. Now, let me take you guys back for a second. Do you guys remember when we were kids? We could go to the liquor store on the corner and we could buy a big bag. They call them grab bags. We could buy like these big bags of Better Made chips for like a quarter, like 50 cents. And they were sizable bags, right? You go to that same store today and it costs $1.49 for a bag that's half the size and it's mostly full of air. It looks like a big bag because they're all big, fat, and puffy. But once you open the bag, the air just goes, bah, and there's like these many chips on the bottom. That's a form of inflation. Why? Because it costs more money because there's so much money circulating around to get less of a product. Those bags of chips are both figuratively and literally inflated. That's like a literal example of inflation. The fact is, folks, when our purchasing power diminishes because of all these hoard out US dollars that the government just keeps printing like crazy, that means that we have to work harder. We have to work extra hours at our jobs. We have to take on second jobs oftentimes. We have to reduce our expenses, which again lowers our quality of life. If you're a business owner, inflation hits you really hard. And if you want to stay in business, the only way that you could stay in business is to pass on the increase of those costs of goods and services to your customers. That means you have to raise prices of your goods and services. That means you have to lay people off because you can't afford to have a swollen payroll if the cost of goods and services go up. You have to make a decision. Now, if you have to lay off large amounts of people, what does that also mean? Unemployment taxes are going to go up because more people are going to get on the unemployment dole, which means you're going to have to pay more unemployment taxes because where the heck else does the government get the money to pay for unemployment taxes except for businesses? And I know that personally because I am a business owner and I have to pay unemployment taxes, even though I don't have, a bunch of employees that I'm laying off. I'm still on the hook for those unemployment taxes. Everybody is harmed by inflation. And the remaining workers that didn't get laid off, that survived the axe, guess what? They're going to have more tasks at their job for less money. Because all those people that got laid off, the company can't afford to hire new people. Otherwise, they would have just kept the people they already had. So all the labor is consolidated to the few remaining employees that are still working for the company. So their workload goes up. That means that they are overworked and underpaid, What happens when you have a massive workforce of millions of employees who are overworked and underpaid? Bad things happen, guys. Their mental health goes down. Their quality of life goes down. It's all just a big cluster. And at the end of the day, everything just starts imploding, guys. So that's basic laws of supply and demand. And to drive that point home, I want to show you guys what it really looks like, what an inflation economy really looks like. And I'm telling you guys, this is where we're headed. If the government does not stop printing all this monopoly money, we are headed towards what you guys are about to see on this video. Check it out.
Are you complaining about the prices constantly going up? Then you might want to watch this video about one of the most unbelievable cases of hyperinflation in history. That is hyperinflation in Germany in the 1920s, where at some point prices doubled almost every 4 days. Hyperinflation occurs when the inflation rate increases very rapidly, resulting in prices going up very fast and the currency losing its value quickly. One of the most amazing hyperinflation cases in history happened in Germany in the 1920s. As the result of World War I, the German paper mark started to lose its value, and this process accelerated in the 1920s. In 1923, prices eventually ran out of control. The prices went up so much that people were forced to spend billions of marks for daily items and were dizzied by the amount of zeros involved. As an example, a loaf of bread which cost 250 marks in January 1923 rose to 200,000 million marks in November of 1923. Or a newspaper that was sold for 1 mark in May 1922 had a price tag of 70 million marks in November 1923. It was cheaper to use the back of a 1 million mark to write notes, as a notepad would cost billions of marks. Some had to use wheelbarrows filled with cash to get a cup of coffee. At restaurants, customers had to negotiate the price of the food in advance, as there was a good chance that the price could change before the meal was served. Most restaurants did not print menus, as by the time the food would arrive, the price had already gone up. At some point, the situation got so bad that the prices were doubling almost every 4 days. There is evidence that it was cheaper to burn marks instead of wood or coal. Some used marks instead of wallpaper to decorate their walls. Children also used bundles of marks instead of toy bricks. Workers also had to negotiate their wages almost on a daily basis. Some had to use a scale to count the weight of their money to get its value, as it was difficult to count all the bills. Workers were paid twice a day so they could spend the money quickly before it lost its value. Many collected their wages in suitcases. One person who left his suitcase unattended found that the thief had stolen the suitcase but not the money. After collecting their wages, workers would quickly rush to either buy daily goods or pass the money to their family so that they'd spend it before its value had gone down. The German government eventually managed to stabilize the situation by taking a number of initiatives, including cutting 12 zeros from the paper mark and replacing it with a new currency called Rentenmark. However, the economic pressure on the Germans eventually contributed to the rise of the Nazi Party that used Germans' dire economic situation to attract public support and eventually gain power.
I know you got that stimulus check.
So that's what ushered Hitler into power, folks. The Weimar Republic. By the year 1932, you had to use an entire wheelbarrow full of German marks just to get 1 loaf of bread. And we had something recent like that happen. You guys remember the Mozambique dollar? There is a $1 trillion bill. If you find it, let me see. $1 trillion. I don't know if you guys remember this. Let's see. There was a banknote. Here it is. It was a $100 trillion, look at this, $100 trillion note in Zimbabwe. That was very recent, guys, that happened. How did that happen? Inflation. It happened because of inflation, folks. And that's one of the things that worries me, because when you inflate a dollar, a currency of a country, and you break that country, that's when tyrants take over, guys. If it were not for inflation, there would have been no Adolf Hitler. There would have been no Holocaust. There would have been no World War II. But it was because of out of control government spending that broke the German mark, which was the currency of the Weimar Republic before the Third Reich took over, and Hitler swooped in and he rose to power. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the long game of this government that's printing all this money. I would not be surprised, folks. So I want to thank everybody for hopping on the video, for joining your man, Bobby Hesley, today. Please be sure to like, comment, and share this video. Guys, make sure you share this video. Get it circulating around. We got to educate the public about what's going on. Make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can read those 2 articles that I have posted there. And I want to close this video. With a quote from the great Ronald Reagan. This was how he ended. This was his final closing statement of the final debate in 1980 against Jimmy Carter. And we need another leader like this to rise up again very, very soon.
Next Tuesday, all of you will go to the polls. You'll stand there in the polling place and make a decision. I think when you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is there more or less unemployment in the country than there was 4 years ago? Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Do you feel that our security is as safe, that we're as strong as we were 4 years ago? And if you answer all of those questions yes, why then I think your choice is very obvious as to who you'll vote for. If you don't agree, if you don't think that this course that we've been on for the last 4 years is what you would like to see us follow for the next 4, then I could suggest another choice that you have.
So I want to thank everybody for coming on. Be sure to like, comment, and share this video, and I will see you guys on the next show. Peace.